Some lights never go out, even when you unplug them, even when the room's empty, even when you've prayed for darkness, they stay on. In the ICU, it's the cardiac monitor in bed 3. It flickers when no one's there. Not just static, but rhythms, almost like a heartbeat. My name is Yvonne. I'm 41, and I've been a night nurse for 15 years. Nights used to feel peaceful, like the world paused for breath. But lately, I feel watched, and I'm tired in a way rest doesn't fix. I don't talk about it much. Everyone in this job has their ghosts, their sleepless hours, but something about bed 3 is different. It started small, a blip on the screen, a brief beep. You think it's just interference. ICU equipment isn't always perfect. Machines get old, wires fray, signals bounce where they shouldn't, but the rhythm came back the next night. Same time, 3:13 a.m. A faint but steady pattern. Not noise, not static. A sinus rhythm, a heartbeat, perfectly formed. The first time I saw it, I froze. I checked the room, of course. It was empty. The bed was made. No one had been in there for over a week. We kept it open for emergencies, but nothing had come in. I called maintenance. They replaced the monitor, said the old one was outdated, probably picking up someone else's signals. But the next night, 3:13 a.m., the new monitor blinked to life. Same rhythm, same pattern. The other nurses started avoiding bed 3, said it gave them chills. Some joked about it, said maybe the room missed having a patient. Others got quiet. One girl, Emily, requested to be transferred off night shift altogether. She said she kept dreaming about the monitor. In her dreams, it was screaming. I tried not to let it get to me, but I couldn't ignore what I saw. I started checking the patient logs, trying to find a pattern. That's when I found Miller, James Miller, mid-60s, COPD, cardiac complications. He'd coded in bed 3 6 months ago. DNR wasn't in place. We tried to bring him back. He didn't make it. I remember the code. I remember the sound of the crash cartwheels. I remember being the one who got there too late. That was my night, my responsibility. I had been checking vitals 2 beds down. I thought I had time. When I got back, the monitor was flatlining. The others arrived moments later. I still hear the tone sometimes, that flat, unchanging note that means too late. The night I saw Miller's name on the monitor, I almost screamed. It flashed on the screen. Miller, J room, bed 3. Then it blinked out. I thought I was hallucinating. Stress, maybe. Exhaustion. But the monitor didn't lie. Not this time. It wasn't random. It was his. I went to the nurse manager, told her something was wrong. She looked tired, said we all see things sometimes, said the ICU gets under your skin, said she used to hear voices in the oxygen vents. I asked if she ever checked them. She said no. I began to dread 3:13 a.m. I started staying away from Pod B altogether, but it didn't matter. One night during rounds, I walked by bed 3 and it turned on as I passed. Lights up, rhythm clear, the sound of a pulse. That night, I stayed. I sat in the room, alone, waiting. The monitor stayed dark until exactly 3:13 a.m. Then it blinked, beeped. The line formed, a pulse, regular, strong, and then for just a second, a voice, not loud, just behind my left shoulder. A man's voice, dry, calm. You left me. I turned. No one was there, but the monitor flatlined instantly, as if the moment had passed. I couldn't move. My legs were numb. I sat there until shift change. No one came to look for me. I don't think I would have answered if they had. In the weeks that followed, I started walking different paths through the unit, avoiding reflections, avoiding vents, avoiding that room, but the sound of that voice followed me, not in my ears, but in my chest, in that deep part of yourself where fear hides. I stopped documenting the incidents. No one believed me anyway. I tried to rationalize it. Sleep deprivation, guilt, but it didn't feel imagined. It felt real, tangible, as if the monitor wasn't broken, but remembering, as if the room had stored his last moment, and each night it replayed it back, hoping someone would finally stay long enough to listen. Some nights, I catch myself heading toward bed 3 without realizing it, like I'm being pulled, like I owe something. I don't enter, but I stand in the doorway and listen. One night, last week, I found the monitor unplugged. No power, still flickering, still showing rhythm. I touched the screen. It felt warm. I don't think it wants revenge. I don't even think it's Miller. I think it's the moment, the failure, the unfinished breath. I think grief finds a way to root itself into machines, into walls, into wires. I've worked in ICU long enough to know not everything can be explained, and some things shouldn't be. I haven't asked to transfer. I haven't told anyone new, but every night at 3:13 a.m., I stop whatever I'm doing and I listen. Sometimes it's just silence. Sometimes it isn't. Some lights never go out, even when they should. Some beds breathe, even when they shouldn't. The air mattresses in the ICU are designed to self-adjust, rise and fall to prevent pressure wounds. But bed 6 moves differently. Slower, deeper, like it's taking in the room, or waiting for something to return. My name is Clara. I'm 33, a night shift nurse in a county hospital most people try not to die in. I took the job because I needed it, stayed because I got used to the hours, but there's a kind of tiredness that doesn't go away with sleep. Mine started with bed 6. There's something wrong with it. At first it was the usual. The bed wouldn't lower. You'd set it to drop, and it would stall halfway, like it was resisting. Biomed checked it twice, said the motor was fine, swapped the control panel. Still, the same hesitation, just enough to be noticed, enough to make us whisper. The first patient I had in bed 6 was Mrs. Lorna Hayes, 92, palliative. She came in post-stroke, mostly unresponsive. She had these cloudy eyes like she was watching something behind you. We rotated her every few hours, gave her morphine for the pain. She never spoke, never flinched. But the bed, it never dropped, even with no one on it. It stayed half inflated, like it was bracing itself. The night Lorna passed, I was with her. Alone. The room was cold, too cold for the thermostat reading. She exhaled once, and then nothing, just stillness. I called it in. Her daughter had asked not to be woken until morning. I started removing the lines. As I turned off the monitor, the bed sighed. That's the best way I can describe it. A long, deep exhale, and it lowered smoothly, as if relieved. I thought it was grief playing tricks. We all project things at the end. But then it happened again. Next patient, similar outcome. He died just past 2 a.m., and the bed dropped only after his last breath, almost like it waited. I didn't tell anyone for a while. What could I say? That the bed had preferences, that it chose when to settle? But one night, a float nurse came in and asked why the mattress in bed 6 moved while she was walking past. No one was in the room. The machine wasn't running. She said she heard a creak, like pressure, like weight shifting. I started tracking it. Who was assigned to the bed? What time the pressure changed? When the air pump kicked in? There was no pattern I could follow, no clinical explanation. But the bed never fully deflated, even empty. It remained half lifted, like something invisible still occupied it. Then came Mr. Keene. He was awake, alert, end-stage heart failure, but bright-eyed and stubborn. He liked bed 6, said it was the only one that didn't complain. That struck me. I asked what he meant, and he shrugged. Other beds groan. This one listens. He started talking to it. At first I thought it was a coping mechanism, a way to manage fear. He would lie there whispering like it was an old friend. One night I heard him say, "Don't let them take me yet." I stood in the doorway, unsure whether to interrupt. He noticed me and smiled. "It understands," he said. 3 days later, his vitals crashed. We tried everything, CPR, epi, the full protocol. For a moment he came back, just long enough to look at me and whisper, "It's not ready." Then he was gone. I didn't know what he meant. But when we left the room, the bed didn't drop, it stayed elevated. Hours passed. No one touched it. No new admissions. Still, the mattress held its form. When I returned just before shift change, it was fully lowered, but the sheets looked wrinkled, pulled to the sides, like someone had climbed in and out without us noticing. The housekeeping staff avoids the room now. They say it's colder, that the air smells metallic, like old blood. We use the bed only when we have to, but I've noticed that patients in bed 6 don't sleep well. They mumble, reach for things above their heads, say strange things like she's watching or don't move me yet. I ask maintenance to remove the bed, but it's too expensive. As long as it works, they say. But it's not about function, it's about presence. That bed is occupied, even when it's not. I've seen the sheets indent when the room is empty, heard the whir of the compressor with no trigger, felt the floorboards vibrate. I once sat beside it during my break, just to see. The hum of the hospital faded. It was like the room swallowed sound, and I swear, I felt the bed lean toward me, just slightly, like a nod. I've asked myself if it's just burnout. The ICU changes you. You watch people go, over and over. Sometimes you wonder where all that grief collects, maybe in the walls, or the wires, or maybe in the bed that never drops. Some nights I hear the hiss of air escaping. Even when I'm on the other side of the unit, it always comes from bed 6. I don't look anymore. There's nothing to see, but the sound stays, soft, rhythmic. I don't believe the bed is haunted. Not exactly. I think it remembers. I think it holds on to weight, to names, to endings that weren't quite right. When my shift ends, I avoid the hallway that passes its room. I walk around the long way, because I know if I glance in, I might see the sheets rising, or worse, someone I recognize lying there. The bed never fully deflates, and maybe it never will. There's a wall on the south side of the ICU that's entirely glass. It looks out onto a courtyard that no one uses anymore. Overgrown ivy, a crumbling stone bench, and one dim light that flickers against the window when the wind picks up. At night, the reflection in that wall becomes a second world. You see yourself, the monitors, the beds behind you, but sometimes you see more than that. My name is Eli. I'm 41, an ICU nurse, 15 years of nights, of watching the line between life and death blur. I used to believe in control, in protocol, but the longer I work here, the more I believe in something else, residue, things left behind, not always visible, but always present. The first time I saw her, I thought it was a trick of the light, a smudge on the glass. She stood just beyond the reflection of bed 9. Long black hair, pale gown, arms hanging loose by her sides. Her face wasn't clear, but I felt her eyes. She didn't move, she didn't blink, just stood there, like she was waiting to be let in. I turned around. No one there. Looked back at the glass. Empty. I didn't mention it to anyone. We all have our ghosts in the ICU, memories that sneak into our periphery. But it wasn't just once. She came back, always in the same place, always when I was alone, charting or refilling meds. She never appeared during chaos, only when the hallway was still, when the only sounds were the beep of oxygen saturation or the low hum of the vents. Sometimes I'd catch her in the corner of my eye, thinking it was a coworker, but when I turned, the corridor was empty. I tried to rationalize it. Fatigue, pattern recognition. I studied the layout of the courtyard, checked security footage. Nothing. The camera outside was angled away from that side. Typical. One night, I asked Marie, another night nurse, if she'd ever seen anything strange by the glass. She went quiet, then said, "Only when it rains." I asked what she meant. She didn't elaborate, just stared at the window like it might answer. A week later, it rained. Heavy, wind rattling the frame. I was alone at the nurse's station. The hallway was a tunnel of shadows and weak fluorescent light. I looked at the glass wall. She was there, closer. Her head was tilted, like she was listening. Her hand was up, almost touching the inside of the glass. That's when I realized she wasn't outside at all. She was inside the reflection, standing just behind me. I spun, heart racing. Nothing. Silence. But the hair on my arms stood up like I'd brushed against static. The air felt charged. Later, as I checked on a post-op patient, I glanced at the window reflection in the IV pole's chrome. She was behind me again, only for a second, but I didn't dare turn around. I started tracking it when she appeared, what time, what patients were in which beds. There was no pattern I could trust, but she always showed up near bed 9. That room had seen more deaths than any other. Statistically insignificant maybe, but I started requesting my assignments away from it. Still, I'd feel her. At the edge of my shift, in the lull between midnight and 3, when time stretches and the walls seem too thin. One night, a new patient was placed in bed 9, a young woman named Adina, respiratory failure. She was barely 30, intubated, pale, fragile, but she had this peacefulness, like she was already halfway somewhere else. Around 2:15 a.m., I heard the sound of someone speaking softly. It was coming from her room. I stepped in, no one else there, but her lips were moving. She was unconscious, still sedated. I leaned closer, her breath shallow, barely there. She whispered, "She's watching." I froze, her eyes opened, just a sliver, and I saw something reflected in them. Not me, not the monitors, the glass wall. That night, Adina coded. We brought her back, but barely. Afterward, she wouldn't settle, kept trying to turn toward the window. I moved the curtain, but that didn't help. She kept whispering the same phrase, "She's still there." I sat with her for nearly an hour. As I held her hand, she looked straight past me and said, "She wants to come in." I couldn't sleep that day. I lay in bed, the room too quiet, too still. I kept thinking about that glass wall, about whether it reflected us or showed us something waiting beyond. When I came back the next night, bed 9 was empty. Adina had been moved to telemetry, stable, recovering, but I wasn't relieved. I walked past the window. Slowly, my reflection followed, and so did hers, just a step behind. I asked Atwaynee to let me transfer floors, told them I needed a change. I didn't say why. They didn't ask. Before I left, I said goodbye to Marie. She just said, "You've seen her, haven't you?" I nodded. She told me the wall used to be solid before renovations, but there was once a long hallway behind it, that a psych patient disappeared and the old records vanished. The only trace was a note scribbled in the margins of an old report. Found her staring at the wall again, says she can hear her name. No one ever figured out who wrote it. Now the glass stands there like a thin membrane, a boundary, but it's cracked, just slightly. Sometimes I still visit the ICU, just to help, or because I miss the quiet, but I don't walk past the glass wall. I won't, because I'm afraid the day will come when she's not behind me, but beside me. The fear this story holds isn't about death, it's about proximity, about how close the unseen can get before we realize it's not outside us, but within reach. This story, like the others, breathes the atmosphere of the ICU, a space where silence isn't peace, but a presence, where reflections lie, and watching isn't always passive. There's a code we rarely call and almost never discuss. Not code blue, not red, not anything in the books. It's a whisper, passed nurse to nurse when something is wrong. We call it code quiet, the kind of quiet that doesn't soothe but suffocates, like sound is holding its breath, like the walls are listening. My name is Jocelyn. I'm 39, a night shift nurse in the ICU. I've worked here long enough to tell the difference between silence and stillness. One means rest, the other means something's about to change. I used to be terrified of the rush, the alarms, the crashing rhythms of life and death. Now it's the absence that gets to me, the soft beeping that suddenly stops, the footsteps that echo wrong. Code quiet started as a joke, a way to lighten the mood when things felt off. It's a code quiet night, we'd say, smiling tight. But there was always something behind it. Nights when even the machines hummed lower, when patients wouldn't sleep, when they stared at corners and whispered to no one. Those were the nights we stopped laughing. It was 2 weeks ago when the last code quiet happened. I was covering rooms 212, 21T, an L-shaped stretch with flickering lights near the end. We just admitted a man in his 60s, post-cardiac arrest. Room 218. He wasn't responsive, comatose, but his eyes fluttered, and his hands gripped the sheets like he was bracing for something. At 2:47 a.m., the monitors in 3 rooms froze, not flatlined, frozen, vitals locked mid-beat, no alerts, no sounds, just static numbers. I tapped the screens. Nothing. The hallway grew thick with that quiet. Even my breath felt too loud. Then, as if on cue, they all flickered back on. I radioed tech. They said the system hadn't glitched. No outages. No record of interruption. I checked on the patients. Room 215 was crying. Softly. She was intubated, barely conscious, but tears ran down her face, like she'd seen something she couldn't unsee. I held her hand. Her eyes darted toward the hallway. That was when I heard it. A dragging sound. Slow, like something being pulled. But I couldn't locate it. Not left, not right. It was just there, moving, waiting. I stepped into 208. The man was still unconscious, but his mouth was moving. No sound, just shapes. Repeating, repeating. I leaned close. Don't let it hear you. I froze. His eyes snapped open, stared past me. I turned. Nothing. The hall was empty, but I felt it. The shift, like the air around me had been displaced. Something was near. I called the desk, whispered, "I think it's a code quiet." No one laughed. 2 minutes later, 2 nurses joined me, Marie and Devon. We didn't speak, just moved room to room, checking vitals, holding hands, grounding ourselves in the real. That's what we did on nights like these. Made contact, anchored. Room 209's door was ajar. It hadn't been earlier. We stepped in. The room was colder than the others. Not AC cold, wrong cold. A weight in the air. The patient was asleep, but not peacefully. His legs twitched. His fingers curled like he was clawing at something in a dream. Marie stepped to the window, pulled the curtain. She gasped, stepped back. I looked. There was a handprint on the glass. On the inside, smudged, dragged downward. We checked the outside. Locked. No access. No one said anything for a while. The dragging sound returned. Closer now. I swear it passed through the wall. A slow scraping rhythm that set our teeth on edge. Devon asked, "Do you feel that?" We all did. Pressure behind the eyes. A subtle vibration in the floor, like something enormous and slow was shifting beneath us. Code quiet. We did the only thing we could. Sat together in the break room. Left the door open. Watched the hall through the reflection in the vending machine glass. No one wanted to face it directly. Whatever it was. At 4:13 a.m., everything stopped, like a switch flipped. The hallway lights steadied. The hum of machines returned to normal pitch. The air felt breathable again. We didn't speak of it in report, but that morning, when I passed room 208, the man's chart had changed. A new note. Patient verbalized coherent sentence. "It sleeps when we speak." I never logged that sentence. Neither did the day nurse. But there it was. Sometimes when I walk those halls now, I still feel it. Not every night, but when the quiet deepens unnaturally, when the corners feel too sharp, when the space between footsteps stretches longer than it should. It's not a ghost. It's not a curse. It's something older. A rhythm beneath the hospital. A hunger maybe. Or just a watcher. I've come to believe code quiet isn't a warning. It's a presence. And the only rule is, don't break the silence. The fear in this story isn't about what appears. It's about what listens. The kind of terror that coils around soundlessness, where even a breath could summon something that doesn't belong. Like the other stories, it lingers in the ICU's shadows, in its disused wings and echoing floors. It binds them not through shape, but through stillness, a silence that waits for a crack. There's something sacred about ICU documentation. The chart is the final voice for patients who can no longer speak. Meds, vitals, interventions. It's where we make sure their lives, even in the smallest data point, are acknowledged. But when something appears in the chart that no one wrote, the whole floor seems to lean in, holding its breath. My name is Jonah. I'm 38, night shift nurse, mostly ICU float. 10 years now. I'm a quiet type. I do my work. I don't stir the pot. And I definitely don't tell stories like this. But this one's been burning in my chest, and I can't carry it alone anymore. It started on a slow Thursday, late March, the kind of night where the hum of machines fills every silence and you find yourself rereading notes just to stay awake. I was assigned bed 4, an elderly man named Charles, stroke patient, non-verbal, vitals stable but fragile. I checked him at midnight, documented everything, then stepped away to help with a post-op admit. When I came back an hour later, I went to review his chart. There, under the 12:23 a.m. entry, was a new note. It read, "She is cold. She is waiting." Black text, same font, no signature, but placed neatly between my previous vitals entry and a scheduled medlog. I blinked at it, refreshed the screen, checked the audit trail. No recent access under my name or anyone else's. No keyboard time log. Nothing. Just the note. I showed it to the charge nurse, Diane. She squinted, then leaned back and said, "Must be a glitch. System's been acting up." I wanted to believe her, but when I looked at Charles, I swear I saw something different in his eyes. Not fear, not awareness, just an emptiness that hadn't been there before, like a space had opened behind them. The next night, it happened again. Another note, 1:07 a.m. The garden is open. She comes through the gate. Again, no log, no author, no explanation. I deleted it, not out of fear, out of shame. I didn't want anyone thinking I was slipping. But I started checking the chart obsessively, watching the timestamps, taking screenshots, and the notes kept coming. Short, poetic, ominous. She waits where light doesn't reach. He turned away from her once. Now he never wakes. I started dreaming about a gate, a metal one, rusted, always slightly ajar. Beyond it, ivy-covered stone and a cold wind. I'd wake up with a taste of earth in my mouth. Then came the night Charles passed. It was quiet, peaceful. We had just changed his dressings, repositioned him. I'd stepped out to update his daughter on the phone. Came back to flatlines. No code. Just gone. As we were cleaning the body, I noticed something on the printed chart for transfer. At the bottom, in the margins of the final page, the gate closes behind her. She does not look back. I didn't write it. No one did. But there it was, printed ink on paper. I kept that page, slipped it into my locker like it was some forbidden page from a book no one should have read. After Charles, it stopped for a while. Weeks passed. Nothing odd. Just the usual. Long nights, quiet deaths, bad coffee. I told myself stress had warped me, that maybe I'd imagined more than I saw. Then, in early May, I was floated to the East Wing. Different system, different beds. A woman named Mrs. Tran, non-responsive, end-stage cancer. Her chart was clean, empty almost. I updated her pain meds, noted her vitals, stepped away for 15 minutes to help with a restless patient. I came back to find a single new line in the narrative. "You forgot to close the gate." It felt like something heavy dropped into my stomach. That same gate from the dreams. That same chill. I checked the audit logs. Nothing. Again. I printed the page and circled the note, showed it to IT. They shrugged, called it a formatting error. I stopped sleeping after that. The dreams became more vivid. I'd stand at the threshold of a cold garden, the wind like whispers, and always, someone standing just beyond the ivy. A woman, pale, silent, reaching, but never crossing. One night, I found her in the chart. Not a note, a name, Adelaide, typed in as a patient alias. No assigned MRN, no DOB, no attached notes, just there, a ghost entry. When I clicked on it, the screen froze, then blacked out. I never found that name again. But the next shift, I noticed something else. Patients near me, Ones in that final stage began turning toward the corner of the room, the one opposite the monitor, as if they were listening to something. One whispered, "She's writing again." I hadn't told anyone, hadn't breathed a word of it, but somehow it was known. The last straw came 3 weeks ago. I was documenting vitals at 3:13 a.m. The unit was still. No emergencies, no codes. I looked away for a second. When I looked back, there was a note being typed, on its own, letter by letter, like invisible fingers tapping the keys. Slow, deliberate, the words, "You opened the gate, you must close it." I stood up so fast my chair slammed back. The keyboard slid, untouched. The screen went blank, then flickered back to the login screen. Diane found me pacing near the med fridge, white as a sheet. I told her everything. She didn't laugh. She didn't call me crazy. She just said, "It's not the first time, it won't be the last." She showed me a folded paper from her pocket. A note, different words, same tone. "The gate swings for those who watch too long." She's kept it for years. I don't work nights anymore. Switch to per diem, day shift, less quiet, less reflective glass. But sometimes I walk past the ICU in daylight and feel something tug at the back of my thoughts, like a whisper from a page I haven't turned, or a chart that's still writing. The fear in this story is not about ghosts, but about records, about what gets preserved when we're not looking, about how something, not someone, might be keeping watch, taking notes, keeping score. This story connects to the others through silence, through the eerie belief that something in the ICU remembers us longer than we remember the names of our patients, that even the systems we trust, charts, reflections, routines, can be vessels for something older, colder, and waiting.